Hi there. I am a new player to the Lichess 45 leagues, and my current round opponent for the LoneWolf League is actually Finn, so I wanted to record a video just showcasing my preparation process because I think some of you might find it interesting, and also because I feel like I went fairly in-depth compared to my other games. I usually would play some sort of e4. I'm actually trying to learn it, and part of my reason of joining this league was to practice new openings in a environment that's a little bit more focused and a little bit more serious compared to just online blitz where everyone plays the Pirk and yeah. But I wanted to just showcase my preparation process because I am going to play my normal openings. This week I've been paired against a very strong opponent, maybe the strongest opponent in the Lone Wolf League, although I believe there's some other people who are very strong as well that I've played. Yeah, so anyways, let's get started. So here I'm just going to spoil it a bit. I'm planning to play this Java London system, and I'm hoping to catch Finn's off guard with this preparation. I'm going to now actually go through my preparation process. So I know in his videos of the Lone Wolf League, he uses the Lichess master/player database, mostly the player database. This is fine. What I like to use instead is this tool called OpeningTree. The main reason to use this is mostly if you're trying to load your analysis onto a separate window, let's say a Lichess study or maybe a chess-based file. In this case, you'd want to actually have just this opening reference open, and opening book lets you download all the games of a player without having to export it into this PGN file or like clog up your chess base with another database full of someone's games. So here I've already run it on Fins, but essentially what you do is you select the platform, you type in the username. Yeah, this is optional. You go color and filters. I would click black because I'm playing white this week. And here there's some advanced filters. I didn't touch them at all. A suggestion is probably to change it to rated only, maybe remove bullet and ultra bullet because the games played during these are not very good. And for the from date, you could try to filter for the last like 2 years or last year in order to just target recent openings from your opponent. But I didn't feel the need to, mostly because the actual amount of games that Vince has had in this line is not a lot. So we can look here. Yeah, so again, this is part of the reason why you'd want to filter this. I'm just not going to look at any of these moves except for these three. I'd be very happy with G6, and I think this is very unlikely because Vince is higher rated. I don't think he's going to want to enter just a worse position. And also the fact that or not black, but white has so many tries here. I mean, some person played B3 here. And white is just better here, so I'm not concerned with this at all. If I get this, I should just be happy just because my position will just be better. Main two moves to consider are d5 and knight f6. Nice thing about this Java London with 2 knight c3, there actually isn't that much transposition tricks for black. Really, the only thing black can do is c5. Again, if he plays e5, I'd be very surprised. But c5, d5, and already white is just doing well because this line with the knight on c3 and the pawn back on c2 is fairly good for white in these Benoni structures. So I'm not too concerned with this either, and I don't think this is very likely, so I'm just not going to look at it. I think the most likely situation is that he plays d5, right? Knight c3. Again, I could look at bishop f5 and c6. C6 actually transposes to some other lines. I'm not going to go in detail because you'd be here for an hour or two, and I don't want to do that. Bishop f5, it's interesting, but I don't think this is likely because, again, knight f6 was played 73 times. And after bishop f4, we reach our drawable London position. And here we can see there's 4 moves played, but a6 is the primary one, so this is the one I'm going to focus on. I also looked at bishop f5 a bit, and I'll talk a little bit about this. Really, this should transpose back with a6. E6 is also playable, but I have something prepared for this. I'm not going to go in detail because I don't want you to be here for 30 minutes listening to me ramble. Anyways, after a6, e3, bishop f5, this is a position that I'm expecting. I have knight f3, e6. And the idea here is you would keep going down a person's games until you reach, let's say after knight e5, knight bd7, let's say I choose to play a3 here. This is a bad move, but it's just an example. So now here I know my opponent's out of prep, and then I can look at like the top 3, top 5 most played lines or strongest lines according to the engine here, and then I'm very well prepared. If I get this position in the game, I should know what I'm doing compared to my opponent. Of course, I'm not going to play a3 here. That would be a bad move. Yeah, so this was part of my preparation, right? I loaded all of his Lichess games. I also did the same thing with the chess.com games. Actually, in this case, the site was down. but luckily chess.com has an API where you can download a person's games month by month, so I just use that instead. Now it's working, of course. Yeah, so that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So after you've looked at your opponent's games, right, I have their Elite Chess chess.com. I also use the ChessBase opening database, but actually it wasn't that helpful because I think the only games in this d4 knight c3 line were actually on chess.com. And one of the ones that I actually found was this game in 2022 with Bortnyk versus Finns, and it actually entered the line that I was talking about. This h6 move is very interesting. I have something prepared for this as well. But actually, I'll go over the game quickly because it's very interesting. Bishop d3 is good here. Even though you're doubling your pawns, this pawn helps control e4 and c4. And really, at some point, black would like to play c5. But if that's the case, well, not like right now, but even if black can take back right now, that we've undoubled our pawn. So white's doing fine here. Yeah, so e6 was played, queen b3, b6. This is all good. You can see black's a little bit uncomfortable just because this c pawn may be under some threat after rook c1. And that's what Bortnyk played. But here, actually, an important improvement that I had prepared is this e4 move. And the reason why is after rook c1, black got this bishop d6 in. And after knight e5, castle... Actually, you could castle here, I guess. Knight d7, castle. You can see black is doing fairly okay now. If black had a dark squared bishop on e7, they'd be slightly more comfortable just because white has a little bit more space with this e5 pawn. And by playing this e4, you prevent bishop d6, right? Because e5... Actually, there is knight h5, but I'm going to assume that it's just good for white. Probably bishop e3 and you're doing well, like g4. And the knight's trapped or something. Yeah, so black has to play bishop e7 or something, and after castle, this position just looks very good for white. You have a lot of easy improving moves, like rook c1, rook e1, h3, even like a4, all very useful. And after like black plays knight d7, let's say rook c1, knight c7, you always have this idea of taking, even though it ruins your pawn structure, this c7 pawn could be weak. Let's say I don't take rook e1, rook c8. I think I would just prefer white just because you have this space, you have rooks on the open files, and it just looks a little bit difficult for black to actually find something to do. But anyways, yeah, so this is part of the reason why I'm also expecting this bishop f5, just because he's played it the most, and also he got a fairly nice win against Bortnyk here. Okay, this is probably take 13. Now that I've gone over my preparation process, I wanted to actually review what I think Finns is going to prepare for our game. So here is my game database. There's not too much information, but that's because most of my games have been played on chess.com. I think I have like 400 now. And in most of the games I've been playing e4. So if he looks at that, I'm very happy because already he's off track, right? I'm planning to play this d4 knight c3. But anyways, this is what my game history looked like before this Tuesday, where I played lots of Blitz and Bullet. And the main reason I did was, now if we filter by Blitz and Bullet, click this, wait for it to load. I think let's see how many people I'm behind. Yeah, so now we see this is not very informative, right? I have lots of knight f3 games. I play e4, d4, c4. And this is essentially just to throw him off of looking at this d4, because if he does, then he'll quickly see if it will load. After knight f6, okay, again, give it a moment. Knight c3. Yeah, this is very telling of what type of opening I'd play. But even if he finds this, I'm not too concerned, and the main reason why is I actually have not had any games with this a6 and bishop f5 setup. So even though he'll know that I play this line, he won't actually know what I play past like move 4 or 5. So not too bad for me. Yeah, but the main reason why I did this was because this knight of 3 will really throw him off the scent. Even looking at e4 is more likely because I've been playing e4 in my past few LoneWolf games, so this is more likely as well. So I've created sort of a honeypot. I don't know if anyone knows the cybersecurity term, but hopefully this works out. I get a good position out of the opening, time advantage, and also just the factor of surprise by playing different opening. Okay, now that I've gone over my method of prep and actually what I did to try to avoid Finns preparing for me, I'm actually going to go over my prep. I'm not going to cover everything because I want to keep something secret, and also because I don't want to make an hour-long video just explaining every intricacy, especially when I believe I don't understand sometimes fully because I prepared them yesterday. So, okay. So so I play d4, right? Okay, I think this is the easiest thing to explain. I get the center, of course. So there's lots of moves that are played here, and in fact, it's not. There's like a non-zero chance he'll play something like g6 or maybe e6. But really, I'm expecting d5 or knight f6, and after knight c3, transposing back to this Javalena position. So I'm not concerned about deviations. Again, I covered this earlier, but the only deviation would be c5. But after d5, I think I'm just happy. So I'm expecting bishop f4, bishop f5. A nice thing here is a6 actually should transpose to this a6 bishop f5 setup. After e3, the main move is e6 here, but it's a little bit unnatural because you're leaving the bishop behind the pawn chain, and white has this very strong idea g4. You're breaking lots of opening principles here, but it is proven to be good. There's actually a fair bit of games in the database. White scores very well, and also it looks very funny. So yeah, g4. Either way, I'm expecting e3 and then a6, and then I get my position I want after knight f3. There's two moves I need to consider. This h6, which Finn's played against Bortnyk, but after bishop d3, trade, e6. I covered this before, but yeah. b6, and now the key thing to remember is e4, and white gets a comfortable position because there's no more bishop d6. But anyways, I think this e6 is more likely, just because you don't need to commit to a6, or h6 right away. After knight e5, there was two main moves I'm looking at. I looked at h6 as well, just because it's similar to the game that was played. But after knight e5, I actually think the move that Finns will choose is this knight fd7. And this move looks very strange, and you might question why not knight bd7. And the main reason why is this knight bd7 is actually a bit of a mistake. After g4 here, black does not want to play bishop g6 because h4 is very uncomfortable. White is threatening to trap his bishop with h5, bishop b4, f3, and if black takes, now white can take d takes e5, and the bishop is trapped. So black's best bet is to play this h6 or h5, but you can clearly see after knight takes g6, f takes g6, black's structure, oh, that's the wrong color, is not ideal. And after something like queen d3, which is very strange, but the idea is to bring the bishop to h3 after g5, black's already in lots of trouble. I think king f7 is the best move. And generally, if you're playing moves like king f7 in the opening, you're not doing very well. So yeah, so knight bd7, I'd be very happy to get this over the board. Again, black's best move actually is to take on e5. But after white takes on f5 here, the knight is hanging, and white is starting to take on e6. And after either knight retreat, like knight c4, knight e d7, or knight c6, this is the main move, for example. After take, white is just doing better just because this structure is not very comfortable. White has a bishop pair and very little problems. I do not remember the actual move here. I believe it's something like a3. Bishop h3 is also worth considering as well. I think maybe forcing... I think this is a little bit scary actually because black may get some counterplay, but this should be fine for white, and I'd be pretty happy to get this in the game. Yeah, so either way, I'm expecting this knight fd7. And I hear the best move for white is still just to play g4. And after bishop g6, Finn's had a game which went h4 here. However, this is actually a mistake. You actually want to take on g6 here. I can't actually explain the exact reason why h4 is so bad, because it actually fits in with the theme of playing g4, h4 in the Draw of London, especially in these lines where this bishop gets attacked. But I believe the reason why is black can take here and play h5, and actually, you notice after g5, white actually has some weak light squares. They have some space, but black always has like c5, b5, and is doing fairly well. The main difference here is after knight takes g6, h takes g6, I'm actually going to change plans. H4 would be a pretty bad move now, just hanging a pawn. Instead, white can play this e4 move, and I'm threatening to take on d5 and play bishop g2, queen e2 in some cases as well. The best move for black is knight f6, a little bit unnatural, but I mean, I guess there's not too many other options you can do. Queen h4 would be just punished by bishop g3, and now this black queen actually should go back to e7. If you try to insist on queen g5, then white can take and play queen e2, and this is a very uncomfortable check, not only because if black blocks, then I can take, but the alternative is just to play king d8, and this king is not very well placed on d8, I think. It's very obvious. I think just f4 and white's doing very well. Alright, so Knight f6 is what I'm expecting. I believe he should find this, just because this is the strongest move and you really have to reinforce this d5 square. If bishop b4, I have a similar idea to queen h4. I just take. And whether black takes or not isn't really a concern. The main idea is this queen e2. And black cannot block queen e7 because I take on c7. But playing king f8 is not so comfortable, especially when white's plan is fairly simple, just bishop g2. You can I believe you can castle either way. Maybe even queenside castling is good here, and this king is actually a little bit uncomfortable. Oh, I think that's not really the main point. The main point of this position is this bishop pair is very valuable, but that's besides the point. I think like knight f6 is probably natural here, but maybe just g5, knight h5, bishop e3. And okay, this is not super accurate, but I think white is still comfortable here. Maybe f4, f5 in some cases. And this d5 pawn is also very annoying to defend. If you play c6, then this knight actually doesn't have too many good squares. You may be able to come to c4, but that will take a while. And white can just play c4, for example, to stop this. Okay. Yeah, so this is not so good for black. So again, knight f6 is the main move. And now I have bishop g2 prepared. And there's two moves I looked at here. I think bishop b4 is very likely, just because it's very natural, right? You pin this, you maybe threaten to take, or d takes e4, knight d5. Alternatively, if you take here, I believe white just gets a nice position, just because of these two bishops. They're very, very strong. Knight c6 would be okay, but after this, for example, c3, bishop d6, I believe actually bishop e3 is the move. You don't want to trade. White does have more space and two bishops, so you can't complain too much. And if instead c6, there's actually this very interesting sacrifice with queen f3, queen takes d4, and castles. And the main idea is, even though white is down a pawn, it actually looks a bit strange with this g4, black is in some trouble just because they've not developed any of their pieces. For example, queen takes b2 would be not ideal, because after rook b1, I'm picking up the b7 pawn, c6 is falling, and black's king is still stuck in the center. One important thing about this castles move is that you might think f5 is actually very strong, because for example, after bishop d3, black is doing okay now, just because they're starting to grab some space. I don't know the strongest move, maybe not g5. g5 is a bad move. And e5 would also lose as well. But I don't even have to play bishop d3. I can just play rook e1 instead. And after this, queen d5, c4, I believe queen d7, rook e1. There's some very strange stuff going on, but white has enough compensation. With rook takes e6 next, and black's king again is still in the center, and these pieces are all sitting on the back rank doing nothing. I actually probably should look at this because it may actually be likely to happen over the board. Okay. Yeah, but queen takes e4, not a concern. And c6 is just passive, so I'm not expecting this move. I think more likely, instead of entering this and giving white like a decent game, I think bishop b4 is very natural. And now the key point is white will take here. E takes d5 is a mistake, just because queen d3, I believe, is the move. Actually, I've not looked at... Oh, I should have looked at... knight takes g4 loses to here, queen e7, bishop d5. Right? Yeah, okay, I'm slightly better here. Actually, this is not clear at all. But I guess maybe this is okay for white. And I guess, I missed this as well. The c7 pawn is hanging because the queen's actually pinned. Yeah, but I don't think e takes d5 is natural. I believe knight takes d5 makes more sense, just because it looks like it's forcing white to go back. And white should go back here. Now after this bishop d2, I expect either c6 or knight c6. Like the engine is suggesting the queen e7, queen d6, but I'm just not convinced. I have prepared stuff for both of these. I'm going to go over the knight c6 line first, because I think it's very fun. After knight takes d5, bishop takes d2. Engine will say queen takes d2 is the best move, but actually I'm going to play king takes d2. And the reason why is I believe it's very difficult for black to play this position. For example, after you capture the knight, queen e2 check, the best move now is actually king d7. At higher depth, king f8 is a mistake. And the main reason why is after c3, queen g5 check. Now the key is king d3. The main reason why you go king d3 and not king c2 is actually after rook e8, queen f3, rook e4. You like to play rook ae1, right, to challenge this rook, but now there's rook takes e4, and this is not so comfortable for white anymore. Instead, if you play king d3, there's actually no checks here, right? The knight b4 is covered by the c pawn, queen f5 is covered by the g pawn. And after rook e8, queen f3, rook e4, rook e1. Oh, sorry, I need to throw in h3 first. h3. Oh yeah, okay, the line I looked at was knight a5, b3 to stop knight c4 and queen d2. After, let's say, c6, rook e1, trade. I think white's a little bit better, right? This knight is misplaced, and actually white's next plan is king e2, king f1 to finally castle by hand, which is hilarious. If I get this position over the board, I think I'll be doing very well, especially since, again, I'm still in preparation here. I have a few lines prepared. I believe I want to play queen e or queen f3, queen g5 check, king d3, rook f8, and I believe, yeah, there's a very interesting h4 idea. After take, king c8, queen c5, rook d8, I take, and now actually black can take on f2. After queen takes c6, queen takes f2, take here. I think c3, and now it's a draw. But again, I've just rattled out like 26 different engine moves. I don't think we're going to go that deep. So either way, white is doing fairly well, I think, just in practical terms. Even if the engine says it's zeros, I think it's a little bit more comfortable for white here. Yeah, so that was a mouthful. The alternative I considered was the c6 move. But here I'm also getting a very interesting position. After a3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, queen d6. The idea is knight f4 here, so queen f3 is the best move. Knight d7 developing, and now I have this interesting idea c4. And best move for black is actually knight b6 here. And the main reason why is I cannot go c5 because the queen takes d4, and this rook would hang. Same thing with this pawn. But white has this very interesting idea now, queen d3, setting a trap. Knight e5 now is a very tempting move. I guess c5 also good, but I believe just bishop e3. Okay, take. Actually didn't look at this in depth, but okay. Even though my structure is a bit bad, I do have the two bishops, so I think white has some decent practical chances. So here, after this queen d3, black has this very tempting move, knight e5, but white can actually take the knight. And it looks like a mistake at first because I'm getting forked here. But after bishop e3, queen takes a1, king e2, queen back to e5, right? Because otherwise I'd take the knight. Queen b3, already white is actually doing fairly well, practically, even if it says zeros here. It's not convincing because first black has to spot this knight d5 idea, which is a little bit unnatural when you could try to save it with knight d7. But after knight d5, take, f4, queen c7, c4. Black does not want to take with the queen here because this ending, bishop b6 very strong. But even bishop takes b7, and black is not doing very well, right? The king's still in the center. I have the two bishops, and no major issues here. Instead, I think d takes c4 is more likely, but then after queen b4, no more castling for black. If you castle this way, bishop b6, and I win the exchange back with queen c4. Yeah. And actually, this position is not super clear. I guess rook b1, I should be doing well. This is a little bit strange, but I think white should be able to win this here. Okay, queen e4, and yeah, and then still rook d5. Yeah. Regardless of how good the position I get in the game is, I still have to actually win the game of chess, and this will be difficult because my opponent's very strong. But hopefully I get at least, I think getting this position is very likely, and really the position I'll get in the middle game depends on what move he chooses. I think h6 or this e6 followed by knight fd7 are the two most likely options I'm going to get. But hopefully I do get one of these, and I'd be really happy if I get to play my preparation with e4. I think this position is very interesting. If you look at the arrows, there's a lot. And I think, I think I'd be very happy with the game even if I lose, as long as I get to play this king takes d2 idea. But this is already like 14 moves deep, so I don't think it's very likely. But that is the entirety of my preparation. I believe it's probably around like 3-4 hours worth tops. Really the time intensive part is first you have to download all the games from OpeningTree, and then the struggle is actually going through each specific game and finding where it deviates from your preparation, and then gathering all that preparation in a single file. In my case, I had a chess-based file which just contained all of the openings that he'd played, like all the games in this d4, knight f6, knight c3, up until when it deviated from my prep. Like for example, after another example is after this bishop f4, there's this move c5, but he's actually never seen this move e4, so I actually don't have to do too much preparation, just because it's very unlikely to get this, right? It was in like one game out of, what is it, like 80 or 400, or I don't know the number. But besides that, he hasn't seen this, so I'm already doing very well because I've actually looked at this line before. Besides gathering the actual games and then going through my opening files to check when it actually deviates from what I prepared, another lengthy part of preparation is actually reviewing the file, because I have, let's say, well, I'll start from this, not queen e2, but starting from this position, I think I have like 3-4 moves I considered, and each of them is probably like 5-10 moves long. It's just, again, I'm not expecting to get anything of like this in depth. I think we'll probably end up deviating at like move like 6 or something. But just in case, I have looked at the middle game that happens after this. Where is it? After king takes d2, and it's a little bit difficult to remember all the ideas. So I've already gone over the file like once or twice. I'll probably go over it maybe at least before the game we have, like just 30 minutes before, just to make sure I remember all the lines. I think for example, I think the main hole in my knowledge is actually of this e6 and then knight bd7. I'm not super familiar with this position. After knight d7 take, I actually don't know what the best move for white is. Okay, yeah, so bishop h3 and rook g1 are both reasonable, but then there's some, I think a3 or knight e2 actually may be the strongest moves, and this is very counterintuitive. So I'll have to look at this line beforehand. But again, this is not a super big concern. This line is good for me regardless, but it is something to consider. As you do more and more in-depth preparation, the time to actually use it becomes longer, and also there is a risk that he just doesn't enter this at all. Like, let's say if he plays, for example, knight f6, knight c3, c5, I'll look very silly because I've not really done too much preparation in this line, even though it's better for white. But we'll see. Hopefully I'm right, I get a nice position, and I get some good winning chances in the middle game due to my preparation. Alright, that's it for me going over my preparation. I hope this has been mildly interesting at least, and I believe this should be entertaining to watch while you're waiting for a middle game to be reached, because I think in the first 5-10 minutes of our game is going to be very boring. Either because I blitz all my prep and then I get an uncomfortable position for him, and then he spends time thinking or trying to recall what he knows about the line, or if he plays the Benoni and then I am out of preparation on like move 4 and I have to spend 5-10 minutes remembering what I actually know about the Benoni. So either way, I hope this was entertaining, and if you like this, please consider following me, just because I'm going to try to do similar things. I really enjoy opening preparation. I think it's very interesting, even though I believe a lot of top players have said classical chess is dead because of preparation. There's a lot of unexplored lines. It's just you have to be willing to play these not so optimal openings, right? Like I believe this d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6 line will become actually like a fairly big part of opening theory for like the next like 10-20 years, because it's already being played by more and more professional players. I think the most recent game was it was Gukesh versus Carlsen Gukesh in Norway Chess 2025, and then there was already like a basically novelty played on move 4, I believe, after e3 and then bishop g4. Opening preparation classical chess is not dead yet. I think we may enter some new era where I think Prague played something similar. I think in the Candace in 2024, it was like this. I don't know if it was a delayed version, but yeah, this f5 move actually I believe was played, and this is not good, but it's a good way to get your opponent out of preparation, and realistically plus 0.7 is not too bad. Like the Dragon Sicilian is a similar type of opening, and it was played, I don't know, for like 200 years, and it still is being played today. So yeah, classical chess is not dead. Opening preparation not dead. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.